Well, I can't believe they let an amateur like you step into the ring.
Every time you so much as open that cruddy pie hole of yours, all you do is prove to the world that you are the biggest dumbass alive.
Hey guys, Nick here, and welcome to part 7 of What If Dale Survived the Remake. Last time, we got into the prisoners, and Dale especially being a key asset in Tomas not getting killed at the first opportunity, and Tomas and Andrew coming up with a heavy scheme, this time Andrew recommending it to Tomas, and Tomas taking the head way in exacting the plan, with the walkers flooding the prison and the alarms making more come in. And once Rick, Big Tiny, Daryl, and Dale get to the boiler room, Tomas kills Big Tiny and stares at Rick menacingly. Just at that moment, Andrew comes out of bloody nowhere and attacks Rick, this time actually getting a strike into Rick, not a fatal one, but a strike nonetheless. So, with Tomas's inclusion, Andrew gets a much better attack point on Rick and the group, because Tomas is there to lead the surge, meaning that they have a much better upper hand. And right when this happens, Daryl is able to get a moment from the door where the walkers were flooding in, and goes and attacks Tomas, and the two actually get into a decent scrap. This would actually lead to Tomas having an actual fight with the group, meaning Daryl, and not just being, killed off. The only major thing that he did in the original was killing Big Tiny, but here, he's getting a little bit more of a better chance to show what he's capable of. Meanwhile, Rick and Andrew are in their scuffle, with Andrew definitely holding his own better than he did, and he did hold his own significantly well against Rick in the original. But then, Dale stops the both of them by holding his rifle up, and Rick, he knows that Dale's not going to shoot him, obviously, but he also doesn't know whether or not that he's actually going to shoot Andrew, based off of what he heard about Dale in the woods with Shane before Sophia was found in the barn, and again before he unfortunately had to put Shane down. So thinking that he's going to take out Andrew here is a tall order. But Andrew, he personally doesn't care. He just thinks that Dale might end up shooting Rick. So honestly, it's very perplexing as to what Dale is actually going to do. But Dale says that for Andrew not to move. He has never wanted to take a life. He's never agreed with taking a life. And he's the one who vouched for both of them. There is still a way back from this. He has it in his head that Andrew wasn't doing this of his own accord, and says for him to just give up and he doesn't have to do anything. But just at that moment, Daryl and Tomas's fight wraps up, with Tomas getting in a few lucky strikes with his weapon, but not enough to give him the overall upper hand. Daryl gets the true upper hand by kneeing Tomas straight in the stomach, punching him square in the noggin, and slitting his throat straight at the opportunity. Andrew sees this and is like, you know what? I was probably going to listen to this old man somewhat, but now that Tomas is dead, screw that. Because, he was going to attack Rick at the first opportunity when he killed Tomas originally, so why wouldn't he here? He was fiercely loyal to Tomas, prompting Dale to not shoot him, but shoot to the wall next to him, which scares Andrew and makes him fall to the ground in a heap, because who wouldn't after almost getting themselves killed? This prompts Rick to get the upper hand on him and hold him at gunpoint with his python. And this would be like a double-edged sword. Dale was prompted to shoot the wall next to Andrew after Andrew was prompted to try and attack, which in turn all of that prompted Rick to actually get his gun onto Andrew. So it's literally like a triple prompt, if you will. Dale says to Rick that Andrew doesn't need to die. Sure, Tomas might have deserved to die a little bit because he kind of did that to himself. And after he's the one who vouched for him, he will admit that. But Andrew, for all they know, he probably was just working alongside of Tomas. Rick asked Dale if he's really willing to risk that, based off of a what if. Funny. Anyways, Rick says to Dale that even if that were the case, Andrew, these two in particular, were the monsters out of all those prisoners. Sure, Big Tiny, who just died, and the two others, they seemed like nice prisoners, and they didn't seem like the type to attack. Otherwise, like Andrew and Tomas here, they would have done so already. But he is not willing to risk their well-being anymore based off of a what if. Once again, funny. But Andrew, yeah, he's not really going to be siding with Dale at this point. Andrew definitely was fiercely loyal to Tomas, and he might have listened to Rick before he killed Tomas, but as Destinies has proven, Andrew can have his own one-track mind. And he wasn't fiercely controlled by Tomas or anything, and says that he fiercely enjoyed working for Tomas and killing those that stood in his way. This is his prison, and no one's gonna take... And right at that moment, he is killed. Because Rick was just undoubtedly sure at that point that, yeah, Andrew was not getting out of this alive. And then he looks to Dale, who he knew would be shocked by this, and says that he didn't have a choice. It was either kill him or risk one of their own getting killed again, like just now. And they don't even know about T, remember? So, or Carol, like, finding her way somewhere else and possibly being dead. So they just think that Big Tiny was dead. And he looks to Dale and is like, if he didn't do this, Andrew was just going to do the same plan over again. They tried Dale's way, and they had to do it this way. There was literally nothing they could do. Dale, although very against this because of how we know Dale to be, obviously, even though he is heavily against this, for he knew that it was like Andrew was like Randall in a way, except now he knows that Andrew was much darker before Rick unfortunately had to put him down. So he can't really do anything. He agrees with this. Now, besides Big Tiny, who would have originally survived past when he did, I mean, he kind of did, Dale being another survivor, even though T-Dog died, we still have two survivors besides Dale himself. Lori, who survived her pregnancy thanks to Herschel and Maggie, and Jimmy, who really hasn't had a true death date yet. Meanwhile, at Woodbury, like I said, everything with Michonne and Andrea would progress the same way. We get to meet the governor, we get to know a little bit about Woodbury, and we see the governor show Andrea around, including the fights, which would show Merle in high regard ever since that they saw him and were, quote-unquote, kidnapped by him. And pretty much all of that Woodbury segment, for now, going the same way that it has. But that's going to change here soon. But before that, let's talk about the prison before we hold Woodbury in high regard. Daryl and Maggie, I feel, would still be the first two to go and get formula for Judith, but it would just be them going just out of just going. It wouldn't be because Rick's not doing good or Carl not being so good, because there would be no Savage Rick if Lori didn't die. which is not the first time I've done this. Ever since I did What If Laurie Survived, I've almost made Laurie survive on the regular, but that's because I could figure out a way to make her live, and just because the story, if it calls for it, it calls for it, basically. Kind of sound like a broken record on that, but hey, if you have to, you have to. But anyways, with Rick not seeing Laurie or knowing that she's dead and getting all crazy, this would mean that they would actually go into the deeper part of the prison to find Carol, at least, because she would be the only one that they know of to be unidentified, which means that Carol would be found a few episodes sooner, and she would be in much better shape than she was, giving her recovery much better progress. Granted, she wasn't, it definitely seemed like she was near death's door, but it didn't seem like, I don't know how to explain it. She would be in much better condition than she was. Meanwhile, at Woodbury, things start to fold into a different texture, with Andrea and the governor getting a little bit, together, and Michonne leaving, even though she understood Andrea's resolve more, and Merle, Tim, Crowley, and Gargiulio going after her. Michonne killing Tim and Crowley, having a standoff with Merle, and then getting away injured, with Merle injured himself and unfortunately having to put down Gargiulio. Afterwards, this is where things with the Woodbury segment begin to change. Besides the whole Andrea having a different resolve thing, but that's minor. This time, it's not Glenn and Maggie that are gonna go and get the formula. This time, it's Glenn and Dale. Why? Because I feel that with Dale, how close they were, like Glenn seeing him as like a teacher and father figure, and just in the context of this, it would be good to put them in this place, because Glenn and Dale definitely deserved more scenes with each other. And I don't mean that in a wrong way, if you guys get what I mean. Anyways, let's ignore that. And while they're doing this, they meet a very unexpected person in the form of Merle. Merle is even more surprised because this time it's not just Glenn that he recognizes. Dale is there too. Now, we don't know how often Merle and Dale saw each other at the Atlanta camp, but we for sure can guess that they knew each other. Glenn raises his gun surprised, and Dale is equally, if not more so, surprised to see that Merle is alive. Like I said, we did not see any scenes with the two of them together, but we can definitely infer that they knew, that they of course knew about each other, and they had to have spent time at the Atlanta camp before the show basically started. Merle at that point, seeing as there's two people that he recognizes, is for sure knowing that these two know where his brother is, and not just like, oh, it's Glenn. He's gotta know, right? And now, since Maggie's not there, this just gives him more incentive to ask about his brother. Because Dale's there, it gives him extra influence that his brother is going to be alive. So, he asks, and he'll say that he'll call off everything that happened in Atlanta. But Glenn, like before, he is a lighter person with Dale alive. But he is definitely still unsure as to whether or not to trust Merle. Because if this particular scenario happened and you were in the place of Glenn, would you trust him? I would definitely think not. But Dale says for Glenn to back off for a second. He will talk to Merle for a sec, and then they will talk. But Glenn's got to let him take care of this. And Glenn, holding Dale in high regard, of course we know, allows it. I mean, he doesn't technically allow it. He just lets it happen. To be frank, his compliance isn't a factor. Dale turns to Merle and says that they've never had a chance to truly speak or, talk with each other. but they will talk in a second. But Dale wants him to stay there and not make any sort of sudden movements. He's not saying that he's going to do anything, but he wants to talk to Glenn about whether or not to trust him or not. Because, of course, they're going to be wary. So if Merle could just sit there and let him talk it out, then they should be good to maybe come up with a plan to get Daryl to Merle. Merle begrudgingly complies because he knows how honest Dale can be from what he knew of him, and just sits back and just waits. This gives Dale and Glenn a conversation in which to trust Merle or not. Of course, Glenn is much less skeptical, but he is far from being, like, trustworthy of Merle coming to the prison or anything. Like, what if they're with another group, and Dale tries to argue this, but Glenn is having none of it, and he still says that he wants to trust Merle, but knowing of what he knows of him, and what everyone of the group knew of him, he's no Daryl. Who knows if he's actually going to, turn good and be all, like, yippity on the frickin' board plane with everybody in the group? Who's to say that he won't turn on them at the first opportunity? And what if he's with another group? That could just bring every one of them to the prison. Just like they had that little problem with Randall. They're lucky that that didn't happen to them. Is Dale really willing to risk that? And Dale says no, but look at Merle. He looks beat up. He has a freaking knife hand, for crying out loud. How is it possible that he is with another group, and yet they haven't attacked? Don't you think they would have attacked by this point? Or at least, someone would have sent word or something. It just doesn't really add up. But before Glenn can make a compiling argument, Merle has officially lost patience, feeling as though this conversation is just meant for him to just, be sat on the sidelines. This is just a diversion, and Merle is having none of it. And at the first opportunity, before Glenn can make a compiling argument with Dale, he grabs Glenn at the first opportunity, and instead of Maggie hostage, he holds Glenn hostage. And Dale, unfortunately, can't do anything. And he is not like Glenn here. He's not going to raise his gun. And even if he did, he would not want to shoot. We know Dale by this point, even if he has evolved a little. So what is going to happen here? Dale can't do anything. Will he be forced to go to Woodbury with Glenn hostage and Merle leading them both? Will this be a different interrogation to what Glenn and Maggie had? Or it will be even worse, if not around the same, except without, the assault? Or do you think that Dale will actually go and rise above his station and actually shoot Merle? Or do you think that Michonne, who's hiding, by the way, will actually step in sooner and save them both? And that's where we leave things for the moment. We actually got a bit of a longer episode here because there was a little bit more to cover, but it definitely holds the question for if Dale's going to rise above his station or what's even going to happen with the interrogation here as a whole. But I hope you guys enjoyed the 7th part to the series and are enjoying the story as a whole because, like I keep saying, we have got a lot to unfold here with this story, and we're only just beginning. But I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. Like and subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.
Look on the bright side. At least you're gonna get beat by a real champ.
If you press me again, you a dead man.